Before we continue into the content that will help you pass the FOR, it's important to understand there's a learning spectrum of reading or the development of reading, right? And it starts very, very early in a child's life and it goes all the way up to what we know how to do now, which is to read and truly internalize and comprehend what we're reading. That's the goal. And you want to accomplish that goal around 8th grade. So the first thing we're going to talk about is concept of print and phonemic awareness. At 3 years old, concepts of print is that they look at a book, the little kid who's sitting in the reading area, they look at a book and they're flipping through the pages and they're mimicking the adult that was reading to them. They still do not know how to read, but they know that the pictures and the letters carry meaning, right? At a higher level of this, children are learning the directionality of sentences. Like you read it from left to right. You flip your page from left to right. And then, oh, how many words are in this sentence? And then how many words are just in the beginning, right? And so it goes from easiest skill to most complex skill. In phonemic awareness, you're learning sound. You're learning the sound b. You're learning the sound You're learning the sound t. And hence, I have been saying sounds because technically, even though a lot of preschool teachers do show letters, really what they're supposed to master is that sound. Then there's a very clear divide where the dotted lines are. And this is where the child is entering kindergarten. And so between kindergarten and 2nd grade, even into 3rd grade, a child must master the ability to decode words, right? We want to spend less time breaking words apart and trying to figure out how to sound them out and more into fluent reading so that we can start using reading as a source of learning. You're going to go from letter sound correspondence. So now they know that the sound B is B, but now I'm going to show you capital B and I'm going to show you lowercase b, right? And then I'm going to show you that 3 letters have 3 sounds, and when we put them together, B, A, it says bat, and that's actually a word that they can use. Then we start identifying what's the beginning sound and the end sound. And remember, as you go up into the grades, it becomes a little bit more complex, right? The letter sound correspondence becomes a little bit more complex. Children start learning about diphthongs and digraphs. And then onset and rhyme, when you start adding more complicated words, well, there's a beginning sound and then there's an end sound. These 2 letters correspond to the beginning. These 2 letters correspond to the end. Then we go into like the rules and irregular words. The simplest rule is the silent E rule. And then we go into bossy R's, or that there's a silent K, or that in thought there's a random GHT. It's just rules that kids need to learn through memorization because there's really no true explanation. So we call that rules or irregular words. And the higher they get into the grade, the more complicated the words become. Another big part of reading is chunking or segmentating. And this is really seen in multisyllabic words, right? If we can figure out that a word has multi-syllables, then I can take those syllables, decode each of those sections, and when I put them together, they make an entire word. So a multisyllabic word would be, and it's also an example of a compound word, would be birthday. Birthday has 2 syllables. Birth. Oh, look, that's one part, day. So that's like a little example there of multisyllabic with a little bit of compound words and how it starts to develop in a child's brain and add to the schema of word recognition. The highest level of kindergarten through about 3rd grade and learning how to read are the sight words and the low vocabulary words, right? We start with sight words as of kindergarten. These are words you just should recognize. Just memorize them. They're going to help with the fluency. They're going to help with the rate. Like you're not there trying to sound or sound out the word at or of. Sometimes they're really irregular words, simple irregular words. And then low vocabulary. So low vocabulary could be words that are content specific, such as in math, adding, sum, right? Those are low vocabulary words that the child can read, that the child can decode, and is associated specifically with a content. And so between kindergarten and third-ish, when a child can decode, is spending less time thinking about how to break the word apart and just recognizes the word, they go into a whole other place. And this is where they're using reading as a learning tool. We're going to learn a little bit about more of the technical language behind that decoding versus reading to understand later on in the workshop. Okay, so the read to learn happens between third grade. You want to be able to have a kid fully read the code, comprehend, pull out important information around sixth or eighth grade. That's the goal, right? And so we start at the lowest level of reading comprehension, which is literal. What are the facts in the story? Like things that are undeniable. How many brothers were in the story? What color was her dress? What happened first, second, or third, right? These are all based in that. And then you have inferential questions. So you have to do a little bit more digging, right? A child has to look inside just a little bit to recognize why that character was sad, why they did that. It takes a little bit of them and a little bit of the facts in the book. That's how I like to describe it. And then you have critical thinking, and this is like a higher order of thinking, right? You are taking all this information from the book, you are taking all the information from your life experience, and you're pulling out problems, you're pulling out solutions, and you're pulling out these lessons learned. So these are things that are not obvious in the text, but through critical thinking, the child can make connections beyond beyond the text. Then there's higher level of vocabulary. And this is where we seriously introduce the content specific vocabulary. So in science, you have words like hypothesis, experimentation, and in social studies, longitude, latitude, revolution, constitution. And then in math, you have very specific words where we say irregular shapes, or we talk about distributive property. Like they become more complex and they're very content driven. I do want to say that even though these things are assigned a grade, you want to think about it more as a guide as to what a child needs to master between what grades. And some people who do these workshops usually say, "Oh, well, you don't need to know the grade." But it's important for you to know the grade because you need to know what they're supposed to master at the age of the grade they're at so that you can prepare them for the next level or create interventions. And when it pertains to this test, using this knowledge and writing it in your essays is an advantage because then you know what you're talking about. You know where your student is supposed to be if the scenario asks you of a third grader. So it's important to know these grades. If you're wondering where I got this information from, I got it from this professor on YouTube. He does a lot of distance learning. He actually prepares individuals for the reading specialist exam. And so even though the foundations of reading is just a small portion of that, his knowledge has really helped me understand what that spectrum is. And so I've also attached his video down in the additional resource section. If you want to go ahead and watch the video, they're really great. And he really breaks down and even shows you different activities you can do with it. So once again, I urge you to really internalize this entire spectrum, watch the additional videos that I have posted on the additional resources because I will continue to visit this spectrum.